With Avengers Endgame, Phase 4 of the MCU is on the horizon. And while technically Spider-Man Far From Home is the last film in Phase 3, Endgame has been looked upon as the end of an era. Today we're going to look at what Endgame did that will change the face of the MCU forever, either for us as the audience or the remaining MCU characters. With that being said, let's get started. In one of the final scenes in Endgame, we saw a new Captain America being crowned. Old man Steve Rogers passed on his mantle to Sam Wilson. Rogers was the pinnacle of a leader. He rallied the Avengers time and time again. None more so than the final big battle in Endgame, when Rogers finally uttered the sacred words, "Avengers Assemble." Now, the former Falcon has gigantic shoes to fill. There are plenty of leaders in the Avengers now. For example, Black Panther and Captain Marvel. Will they be able to respect Wilson as much as they did Steve Rogers? It's going to be near impossible for Wilson to strive for that goal, but hopefully, over time, Sam will carve out his own legacy as Captain America. Thanks to Professor Hulk and the Ancient One, we were introduced to alternate timelines. More on that later. Present-day Loki met his sad demise in Infinity War. As fans desperately looked for a clue that he was alive, Endgame provided an answer. As Iron Man went to steal the Tesseract back in 2012, it was knocked out of his hands by an annoyed Hulk. Seeing his chance to escape, Loki grabbed it and disappeared. Now past Loki is kicking about in an alternate timeline somewhere, something that will likely be addressed in Disney Plus's Loki TV show. However, the heroic redemption story arc that present-day Loki had has now gone. He went through a change over the years, from the villain in the first Avengers film to teaming up with Thor in Thor Ragnarok. This will likely cause past Loki to become the villain trickster god once again.
There is no stopping it.
Another big loss to the Avengers and the whole MCU was of Iron Man. Tony has been a part of the team since the first day. He was one of the first people that Nick Fury told about the Avengers initiative. He was the inventor and genius that provided the Avengers with an edge in battle. Many times over the years, Stark has come up with a plan to turn the tide in battle.
I'm the best.
He even became a mentor to the next generation, such as Spider-Man. In the end, he sacrificed everything to save the Avengers and his family. While there are other geniuses in the Avengers now, the loss of Tony will change the MCU landscape for years to come. Thanks to Hela during the film Thor Ragnarok, Asgard was destroyed. In Endgame, the remaining Asgardians set about creating a new home on Midgard. Once they found an area in Norway, they got to work creating New Asgard. It's very different to the mythical paradise of the prior Asgard. New Asgard is also far less protected. As previously, Asgard required the Bifrost to access it. The Asgardians also had their numbers massively depleted during Thor Ragnarok, which makes them far more vulnerable than they ever have been. With no Odin, or Thor for that matter, the leadership of the Asgardians has fallen to Valkyrie. Hopefully she can lead them into a new era. As Tony stepped away from public life in the 5-year gap, he started a family with his wife Pepper Potts. So along came his daughter Morgan Stark. Morgan in some way helped her father find the courage to sacrifice himself to save the universe. In the future, we may see Morgan follow in her father's avenging footsteps. With Happy Hogan, Rhodey, and Pepper guiding her, she may become an Iron Man-esque character in her own right. However, if she doesn't follow that path, her presence alone will remind the remaining Avengers what her father did to save them all. Another character that's been in the MCU since some of the more early days, Black Widow kept her eye on Tony Stark's potential during the second Iron Man film. With Endgame causing Natasha Romanoff to sacrifice herself, the Avengers have to move on without her. During the 5 years after Thanos' snap, Black Widow became a leader in the Avengers. As Nick Fury wasn't around, she organized the team as they spread across the universe. Her ability to calm the Hulk down will also be missed by the Avengers. If he ever reverts from Professor Hulk and gets out of control again, there could be a problem. On top of that, Hawkeye lost his best friend. Romanoff became essential to the Avengers. She'll be greatly missed by them and by us, even though we have an upcoming solo film to look forward to. Once his family was dusted in Endgame, Hawkeye went on a global rampage. He traveled all over to lethally hunt down criminals. He was ruthless and angry at the universe for taking his family away from him. Hawkeye's guilt of what he did overwhelmed him. As he and Black Widow went to retrieve the Soul Stone, he tried to sacrifice himself as some sort of penance before Natasha beat him to it. Clint now has to live with what he did for those 5 years. While he does have his family back, he no longer has Black Widow to rely on. Clint's more broken than he ever has been. The Barton of old is no more, and we'll have to see that change in the Hawkeye TV show. After half of life in the universe was dusted, Bruce Banner had a plan. He always saw the Hulk as a problem, but he realized that fighting the Hulk was pointless, and they could be better if they teamed up. So for 18 months, Banner researched and experimented. The end result was a Banner and Hulk hybrid, also referred to as Professor Hulk. New Hulk lacks some of the strength that he used to have, but he no longer goes into an emotional rage as such. However, the Avengers have now lost one of their biggest hitters. He's still very durable, as we saw he used the Infinity Gauntlet, but without the Hulk as a last-ditch method to fight the battle, the Avengers are much weaker. Scarlet Witch battling Thanos was legendary. If the sneaky Titan didn't order his ship to fire at the battleground, Thanos would have been defeated a lot sooner. The witch threw around Thanos like he was made of paper. She used her emotional turmoil from what Thanos did to Vision and became a powerhouse. She gave the MCU a glimpse of her power potential. Wanda's opened up the possibility of bringing the mutants into the MCU. With her reality-warping powers, anything's possible, especially if she dips into the comics and causes the Avengers disassembled storyline. During this story, she single-handedly defeated the Avengers. The future is scary and exciting where the Scarlet Witch is concerned. One day, the universe is going about their daily business. The next half of all life is wiped from existence. It may have been moments for the dusted universe, but they didn't actually return for 5 years in real time. When they were away, Earth had become bleak and neglected. The emotional pain for all the people that lost loved ones would have been immense. Then the confusion and delight when they all returned. The former dusted would also have to deal with everyone being 5 years older. It would take a lot of time to comprehend what had happened to them. Speaking of the FiveYear Jump, Cassie Lang was one of those characters to spike up in age. As her father Scott Lang had been stuck in the quantum realm, the whole world had changed. It was a very confusing moment for Ant-Man to see his young daughter suddenly as a teenager. But now with an older Cassie, we have the potential for her to be a hero. Comic Cassie is a founding member of the Young Avengers. She fights crime under the name Stature and later as Stinger. MCU Cassie has seen her returning dad defy the odds with the Avengers and save the universe. If that doesn't inspire her to strap on the spandex and become a hero with the Young Avengers, we don't know what will. Thanos first appeared on our screens in the end credits of the first Avengers film. Since then, he's become the best villain the MCU has produced. Thanos was slowly birthed as a cosmic villain for over 6 years. That kind of commitment is unprecedented. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely that the MCU's next villain will be on the Mad Titan's level. He caused us, as the audience, to fear how much power he had. Thanos caused the biggest loss of life to date in the MCU. The stakes were huge with Thanos' plan for the universe. Due to his plan, we lost a lot of great MCU characters. With the amount of destruction he caused, the effects will be felt for years to come. Time travel was first introduced in the MCU as a major plot device in Endgame. The hero's whole plan required a time heist. Now it's opened a jar of possibilities to the MCU's future, such as potential villains like Kang the Conqueror, or bringing back fallen heroes or even changing past events. As it's one of the MCU's new toys, we can expect it to be important in future films. Even for the characters inside the MCU, there is a lot of temptation to change mistakes in their past, or even revisit past memories. Thanos lobbed present-day Gamora off a cliff in Infinity War, so in Endgame, thanks to time travel, past Gamora slipped into the present day. And past Gamora hasn't had the same experiences as the fallen Gamora. Previously, Gamora had slowly turned her back on her adoptive daddy's villainous ways, but this time, she had to do it quickly. She also has no recollection of being with the Guardians of the Galaxy. On top of that, she has no history with Peter Quill, which puts their potential romance on ice. Due to the dissimilar experiences, Gamora is a different character now, which changes the dynamics of the MCU and especially with the Guardians. The introduced time travel elements has also flipped how the MCU will tell future stories. For starters, we can potentially expect more origin stories to be included, even years after the characters already appeared in the MCU. Take the future Black Widow prequel film as an example. Previously, it took a little bit of thinking where certain films fit into continuity, such as Ant-Man and the Wasp being released after Infinity War, yet it was mostly said before the events in Infinity War. Now the linear continuity will have to be turned upside down. We could have a future film that takes place before the first Thor film. No longer will we have an easy story road from A to B. Instead, we'll have plenty of stops and tangents on the way. Chris Evans has now walked away from his second Marvel character. His first role was in the mid-2000s Fantastic Four films as Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. And now, Evans sailed off into the sunset as Old Man Rogers in Endgame's final moments. He has served the MCU on and off the screen since 2011. No more will we see Evans on screen yelling that he can do this all day and tossing his shield at someone. It's difficult to imagine anyone else being cast as Steve Rogers anymore, due to how good a portrayal he did. He was very important in turning the MCU into the juggernaut that it is today. It'll take some time getting used to seeing no more Chris Evans on the Marvel screens. Bucky knew beforehand that he wasn't going to inherit Steve Rogers' shield at the end of Endgame. But now, with Steve Rogers out of the avenging picture, Bucky has lost his best friend. On top of that, the only character that was also used as an assassin met her demise. Black Widow shared a lot in common with the Winter Soldier. Both were forced to do a lot of bad before switching teams. While the Avengers roster keeps expanding, Bucky will be feeling more separated than ever. Rogers helped to break the control over Bucky and turned him over to the good side. Without his best friend and moral compass, he could fall into his past nasty habits. On the plus side, the new Captain America, Sam Wilson, will be watching over him like a falcon. In Endgame, the Ancient One explained what happens in time travel to create alternate timelines. We now know that quite a few have been created. Case in point, Loki escaping with the Tesseract. But with this new Marvel mechanism comes plenty of opportunity. Now that the film rights to Fox's Marvel characters are back on Marvel, the X-Men and the Fantastic Four may play a part here. In a new timeline created by some form of shenanigans, we could see the Fantastic Four and X-Men slide into the main MCU. We saw in the recent Spider-Man Far From Home trailer that alternate dimensions will play a big role. This will likely be the start of changing the MCU forever. Thanks to DC's success with Wonder Woman, female-led superhero films are primed to take over Hollywood. Marvel followed up with their own in the shape of Captain Marvel. As we saw in Endgame, as the final showdown loomed, all the still-alive female heroes were in the same shot. This teased the comics' female team, A-Force. The audiences at cinemas across the world squealed in delight at this prospect. So much so that it'll be impossible for the MCU to ignore. It's long overdue that Marvel continue on this trend of popularizing more and more female-led films. The MCU characters have been through a lot thanks to the events of Infinity War and Endgame. They either spent 5 years without their loved ones or lost them permanently. This kind of stress and loss would play havoc on anyone's mind. But for the heroes that have already been through so much, they may struggle to regroup. The landscape of the MCU has changed thanks to Thanos. Many characters will carry the mental scars for years to come. With such a big change in the environment, future films will be affected in some form or another. Case in point, the next SpiderMan film will show the fallout of the recent intense events. We better hold on to our hats for an emotionally bumpy ride. The MCU family just keeps growing. As some characters leave, others are going to drop into the MCU. Future announced films include The Eternals and Shang-Chi. With them comes a variety of backup characters that will follow them too. For example, The Eternals will expand further on the cosmic element of the MCU. Even the possibilities of rumored films like Blade, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and Nova are gaining more traction. The MCU cast gets larger every year. The lineup for the core Avenger team is already bigger than it was in 2012. Prior to Endgame, there were internet discussions on whether the film will signal the end of the MCU. Nope, at this rate, it won't be departing us for a long time, which is pretty neat. In 2012, we had Hawkeye, Hulk, Black Widow, Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America as the Avengers. Now there are only 3 of the original that may still be in the next Avengers team. Since 2012, we've had many characters brought into the MCU, from Black Panther to Captain Marvel and everything in between. And with new characters being introduced in the future, more may be on the way into the MCU. The Avengers lineup may even be completely different once Phase 4 gets started, especially with Thor off in space, Hawkeye retired, and Hulk being Professor Hulk. No matter what the future lineup is, it'll be vastly different to the team that fought the Chitauri invasion. Speaking of Thor in space, as he's joined the Guardians of the Galaxy, the cosmic landscape of the MCU will increase even more. Thor Ragnarok gave us an Avenger getting into space-based conflict. We now have the alien hero, Captain Marvel, flying around the galaxy as well. On top of that, as mentioned earlier, the Eternal film will expand on Marvel's space lore even more. The space future of the MCU is an exciting place. Even the X-Men and Fantastic Four have a lot of history in exploring space. When they're finally brought in, we may see their planetary explorations in the MCU too. The Guardians and Thanos opened the cosmic door, but the MCU are breaking it down further. Disney Plus will be the next item on our monthly TV subscription service bill. Following the progress of Netflix, Amazon Prime, and others, Disney wanted to get in on that subscription action. They have put together a lot of MCU television shows to entice their Marvel fans to their new service. Some of the announced shows include WandaVision and Loki. Now that Disney, who owns Marvel, have this platform, we may see their TV shows and films cross over more. Very rarely has this happened in the past with Netflix's Marvel shows or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. only glancing on the MCU's events. But now with everything under their roof, Disney Plus may become essential viewing for MCU fans. The MCU Trinity was Captain America Steve Rogers, Iron Man, and Thor. Only Thor remains after Endgame. The three have been the poster characters of the MCU since they were introduced. If you were to ask random people who their favorite MCU character was, most would have answered with one of the Trinity. But Endgame has instigated a changing of the guard. However, not all is lost. We can expect other characters to step up and take on a new role within the Trinity, such as Black Panther, Captain Marvel, or SpiderMan. With the MCU being such a success, we could have a lot more characters to hold up the MCU and share the load. All we do know for certain is the MCU wouldn't be where it is today without the Trinity. Are there any other factors that we missed? After watching Endgame, in what way do you think the MCU will be different now? Drop your comments down below. Also, remember to subscribe to stay up to date with our marvelous content. And finally, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time, Marvel fans.